Good morning. I'm the Reverend Meredith Barber, and we are so excited to welcome you to our worship service this morning. We're glad to have you with us today, whether you're joining us in person or virtually, whether you're here for the first time or whether you've been here for a very long time. Here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths and of no faith in particular. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here among us. Our call to worship this morning is a blend of Mary Oliver's beloved classic Wild Geese and words from the Reverend Erica Hewitt. Hear now these words from Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And now from Erica. As we enter into worship, put away the pressures of the world that ask us to perform, to take up emotional masks, to put on brave fronts. Silence the voices that ask you to be perfect. This is a community of compassion and welcoming. You do not have to do anything to earn the love contained in these walls. You do not have to be braver, smarter, stronger, better than you are in this moment to belong here with us. You only have to bring the gift of your body, no matter how able, your seeking mind, no matter how busy, your animal heart, no matter how broken. Bring all that you are and all that you love to this time together. Let us worship.
This is a chalice lighting for when things are not okay, by the Reverend Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit, and so all I ask at this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love. Will you join me now in our affirmation? Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth, thus do we covenant together.
I invite you to rise, either in body or in spirit, and join together in singing our opening hymn, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. It's number 34 in the gray hymnal.
And hopeless gain Good morning. My name is Lauren Daniel, and I am the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. And today, we want to celebrate 9 of our teenagers. Our 9 teenagers will graduate from our 8th and 9th grade, Our Whole Lives program, and we want to recognize them for this accomplishment. We like to call it OWL, Our Whole Lives OWL, and OWL is a comprehensive sexuality program that addresses the body, the mind, and the heart. It's a lifespan program and is offered at times of great physical and emotional change in a person's life. It is age appropriate and it's based on medical science and our progressive UU values. Horizon is proud to offer OWL, especially during this wave of anti-LGBTQ and anti-choice legislation makes its way through our legislatures. Now, most OWL sessions run 6 to 10 classes, but the course our teens just completed, the segment for young adolescents, ran more than 24 sessions and began meeting in August. We were in here with masks, distanced, while you all were worshiping online. Our teens and our OWL facilitators have worked hard while keeping great attitudes and adapting to many of the changes that COVID brought about. And so at this time, I would like our OWL teens to rise in place. And I would also like to acknowledge our OWL facilitators, Dr. Jocelyn Dunham, Eric Freeman, Dr. Brenda Kirkland, and Helena Olakovic. Can we give our teens and their wonderful OWL facilitators a round of applause? Congratulations. So at this time, we're going to segue into our Time for All Ages. And if you brought something for MetroCrest Services, would you please hand it to a young person as I call them forward? And you may put them right in front of this table over here. So at this time, I would like to call all the young and young at heart and my 2 helpers to the front, please. All right, I'd love to see, we have some teens that are still young at heart, and I love to see that. So I'm so glad you all are here today. It's good to see you. So today, as you know, is a big holiday. It's Mother's Day, right? So I wanted to ask some of our folks down here on the floor, what is special about your mom or someone who's like a mom in your life? Yeah, go ahead. So this person said, kind and courteous to everybody. Did you want to say something else? Is there other things?
She does all the stuff in the house.
Oh man, does a lot of stuff around the house, and I imagine for you too, right? Oh, so I heard curious, and what was the next part? Oh, just helping with you all around the house? Yeah, for sure, for sure. So there's a lot of great things about moms or people like moms in our lives. And also, I wanted to talk about something that has started that's called Mama's Day. It's celebrated on Mother's Day, but it's a little bit more than that. It reminds us that there are our mothers, but there's also people who are like mothers to us, and they might not be what you think of when you think of a mother. Okay? It helps expand our understanding of who can be a mother and what a family is, too. So we're going to go ahead and create a mosaic over here, and this is where I have my 2 helpers helping me here. Every time you answer, I'm going to give you these to hand to my helpers. So my question, first of all, what is a mosaic? Do you all know?
Bunch of pictures on a piece of paper.
Yeah, so it's a bunch of little bits that come together to make a big picture. Exactly, exactly. So we're gonna make a mosaic of mamas right now. So every time you answer, I'm gonna give you some of these to hand to my helpers. And helpers, you know what? You can help too, okay? All right, so I'm gonna start. Here you go. So I say a mom or somebody like a mom gave birth to somebody. All right, so what other kind of moms or people like moms are there? Oh my gosh, people who are there for you when you're in need. I saw a hand over here. All right, go ahead. Oh, a guardian? That's right. It might not be, that's right. Okay, what else is there? Can you think of more? How about, let me just kind of give you some ideas then. How about if, do you know anybody who's being raised by somebody that's not a parent? Like a grandparent, maybe? Yeah, I'm gonna ask you, go ahead.
I don't know somebody in particular, but I read a book about somebody who's raised by their aunt.
Oh, that's right, raised by somebody in your family, like maybe an aunt, okay, or another relative. Excuse me. What other kind of parents are there? Can I tell you something? So I'm not a grandparent, but I have fur grandchildren. So you know what? Some of us consider our pets like our children. That's okay too. So who would like to put this one up for the grandchildren, for the fur grandchildren? All right, can you think of any other kinds of of moms or anything like that? I just said stepmoms, which we talked about before. No? Okay, I'm gonna give you a few and then we're gonna finish up. How about like a coach or a teacher? Maybe there's a neighbor that is like a mom to you. Yeah, exactly. We'll go ahead and put these up. All right, so let's go ahead and finish. So we've talked a lot about a lot of different mamas, haven't we? And tell me, what do they all have in common, do you think? Can you tell from the mosaic that's being made up here? Yeah, love, definitely. Love and the care that they show us. Is that really, that it doesn't matter what we call them, it doesn't matter their role, it doesn't matter their gender, it's love and the fact that they care for us and that we care for them. So let's go see what our mosaic looks like. Oh, it's looking pretty good. It's almost turning into a heart. It's great. Thank you all. All right, so thank you so much for listening, and we're gonna go ahead and go off to our classes now.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
At this time, I would like to invite Sandy Steele to come forward to speak about her story of membership at Horizon.
Good morning. I'm Sandy Steele. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I've been a member of Horizon since March of 2006, like 16 years. Where did time go? Today I'm involved in a lot of things here. I serve on membership, stewardship, justice and leadership development, and nominating committees. I love this church, and I love this community. Yeah, it's been a tough week, but I think it's really a good time to talk about membership, to be honest. I've talked about it before, I've talked about my journey before, but now I have the perspective of time. Honestly, 17 years ago, I came here for my daughter, who is entering the 8th grade, and many of you know Montana. Would you believe she's 30 now? And uses they, them pronouns, so just to be aware. They are doing really well with a good job and supportive community and loving their life in Austin. That's a joy, huge joy for me. But like many youth that are a little different from others, the 8th grade was a tough year for them. And I really wish our AL teachers were still here, because thanks to a tip from my sister, Horizon's AL class became a safe haven for them. Sorry, I'm still working on it. During a difficult school year where depression and anxiety took center stage for our family, we both found community, friendship, acceptance, and support. In fact, surprisingly, many of you know they announced a desire to one day become a UU minister. That hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will, and maybe it won't. But what I do know is that Horizon saved their life during a difficult middle and high school years. It's very hard for them. I came to this church for my daughter, but I stayed here for myself and my sanity. I was invited to join in 2006 and promptly said yes. And when I told my sister, Carolyn Moore, she decided it was time for her too. And then a year or two later, my brother, Bill Moore, joined. So the choir is very appreciative. So Horizon is my family, it's in my bones, and it's in my soul. I firmly believe, sorry, it's been a tough week. I firmly believe we need faithful communities like this one that provide a full lifetime of opportunities to become better human beings by supporting one another, lifting each other up, fighting for common causes, and opening our arms and our doors to everyone, especially those on the margins. So I support Horizon with my time and my resources because it gives me hope when life in the world just seems crazy. It gives me community when we need each other to lean on and to dance with. It gives me opportunities to teach and to learn, and it connects me to the broader UU community, where the national conversation brings us together like never before, where we find power in a broader community. This feels especially important at this moment. We are not alone as we fight for the rights of all.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you. We come now to the time in our worship service where we honor the generosity of this congregation and share our gifts with one another. We give thanks this morning for both these gifts and the givers. The offering to support the ministries of this church will now be joyfully given and received.
Where are
Our first reading this morning comes from a poet named Julia Kasdorf. This is a reading that a mentor showed me years ago, and I've loved it ever since for the imagery. So this is called What I Learned from My Mother. I learned from my mother how to love the living, to have plenty of vases on hand in case you have to rush to the hospital, with peonies cut from the lawn, black ants still stuck to the buds. I learned to save jars large enough to hold fruit salad for a whole grieving household, to cube home-canned pears and peaches, to slice through maroon grape skins and flick out the sexual seeds with a knife point. I learned to attend viewings, even if I didn't know the deceased, to press the moist hands of the living, to look in their eyes and offer sympathy, as though I understood loss even then. I learned that whatever we say means nothing. What anyone will remember is that we came. I learned to believe I had the power to ease awful pains materially, like an angel. Like a doctor, I learned to create from another's suffering my own usefulness. And once you know how to do this, you can never refuse. To every house you enter, you must offer healing. A chocolate cake you baked yourself, the blessing of your voice, your chaste touch. We come now to the time in our worship service that we set aside for meditation and prayer. We'll share a moment of silence, a spoken prayer, and then sing together our responsive hymn, Spirit of Life. I invite you to join me now in a moment of silence. Loving God, Spirit of life, mystery in which we live and move and have our being, draw near to us this morning and hear our prayers. We give thanks this morning for this place, for a safe haven where we can share both our joys and our sorrows, for this place where we bring our broken hearts and know we will find others who understand. Spirit, it has been an incredibly difficult week. It is Mother's Day, a complicated day at best, where those among us struggling over strained relationships, struggling over infertility, those whose paths to parenting or caring may have looked different than what society imagines, all those people may be in pain. For those who have lost their mothers, whether that loss is fresh or many years old, it still cuts so deep. And we celebrate those who have chosen not to have children for whatever reason. This morning, we are reeling from the news of the draft Supreme Court opinion that will effectively take away a person's right to choose what happens to their own body. So many of us are terrified, heartbroken, we may feel violated. Spirit of justice, we are angry, and we cry out in the name of all that we deem holy, that the hearts and minds of those in power will be stirred, shaken, woken up to the voice of the majority. Let us breathe together, in and out, and let our anger turn in time to action, that we may find another way. For all these things and those unspoken in the silence of our hearts, we pray today and every day. Amen. I invite you to rise, either in body or in spirit, and join in singing our responsive hymn, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirring of compassion. Blowing the wind, rising the sea, move in the giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our second reading is a Mother's Day blessing by the Reverend Maureen Kilran. We invite the congregation to participate in this reading. After each phrase, I will pause and invite you to respond with these words. We ask a blessing on this day. We ask a blessing on this day. One time, we ask a blessing on this day. In one way or another, each of you was born of a mother.
We ask a blessing on this day.
Because we are human, it's likely that your relationship with that mother is, was, or will someday be challenging.
We ask a blessing on this day.
If you identify as a woman, then it's almost certain that your connection with this matter of mothering is or was sufficiently complex that it's sometimes hard to explain.
We ask a blessing on this day.
From the diversity of our lives, from the similarity of our hearts, let us pray for all who never knew their mothers and all who chose or were compelled to let their children drift away.
We ask a blessing on this day.
For all who long to hold their newborn in the arms of love, and all who faced a pregnancy with fear.
We ask a blessing on this day.
For all who struggle with the pain of their mother's increasing confusion, and all who feel the muddle growing in their own heads and seek to keep it from their parent or their child.
We ask a blessing on this day.
For all whose mothers never grew up and whose mothers never learned to play.
We ask a blessing on this day.
For all who miss the chance to say I love you, and all who long to say it now, but find ourselves afraid. For all who carry ancient wounds, infertility, abuse, misunderstanding, anger, grief. For all who struggle with regret, we ask a blessing on this day.
So I had planned this month to preach on the body, something so many of my colleagues have done, but that I have never felt brave enough to. And though this was not the context in which I had planned it, it feels right that this Mother's Day we are talking about honoring our bodies. Of course, the leaked draft opinion of the Supreme Court reversing Roe v. Wade hangs like a cloud over our time together this morning. This has been such a painful week for so many. There are many complex feelings flowing right now that we may not know what to do with. Those who have been around longer than me may remember a time when abortion was still illegal, may have friends and loved ones who did what had to be done to survive. And we know that many people who sought access to abortions before, many poor women, women of color, died because they did not have access to the health care they needed, because they were desperate to get out of a situation they did not want to be in. We know, too, that making abortion illegal does not make it stop. People who have means will still be able to get abortions, and people who do not will still seek care. It is safety that is left up to chance. We may feel sadness, anger, helplessness, or somewhere in between all of those. To me, it feels like a violation of our collective humanity to assert that some of us have fewer rights to decide what happens to our bodies than others. At a time in my own life when so many of my friends and family members are having children, when I am more aware than ever of all the faith and trust and fear that goes into that choice, this feels so personal. I have been inspired this week by these words from Side with Love. Our Unitarian Universalist faith affirms that our bodies are sacred and that we are each endowed with the twin gifts of agency and conscience. Each of us should have the freedom to decide what does and doesn't happen to our bodies at every moment of our lives, because consent and bodily autonomy are holy. And when disparities in resources or freedoms make it difficult for certain groups of people to exercise autonomy over their own bodies, our faith compels us to take liberatory action. What better way to honor our bodies this morning than to affirm people's right to choose what happens to them? This morning we acknowledge and honor the bodily autonomy of all people in so many different times and places, situations, experiences, and affirm that choice is holy. I carried a sign earlier this year bearing that same phrase, choice is holy. That, I think, in the words of Julia Kasdorf that we heard earlier, is what I learned from my mother. To love the living, all of them, and to understand and assume that there is more to each person's story than meets the eye. That part of the inherent worth and dignity that makes up our humanness is to be able to make choices about our lives. And too many people have to live in situations every single day where there is no good choice. That may become even more true as time goes on. But we are a people of faith who are called to take liberatory action. And we will not take that action alone, but together. Some among us will know that Mother's Day was actually started by a Unitarian woman named Julia Ward Howe. Julia Ward Howe became a Unitarian in 1841, and like many at that time, became an abolitionist. Actually, so much so that she and her husband funded John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Her marriage, however, was not a happy one, and Julia, as a wealthy woman, became incredibly well-read, which eventually led her to write. But no matter what she wrote, her husband disapproved. Despite his best efforts to keep her isolated from literary community, Julia became an accomplished poet. Throughout the Civil War, Julia worked with widows and orphans from both the North and the South. She witnessed the horrors of war up close. She tended to the wounded and bound up the broken. And it is clear that this work is what led to her writing of the Mother's Day Proclamation in 1870. She wrote, "Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We, women of one country, will be too tender to those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs." The first Mother's Day was a call for peace, woman to woman. A call for the attack on the bodies of their loved ones to cease. I want to say, too, that right from the beginning, that Mother's Day is not just about women or biological moms. This day is about anyone who shows care, and that includes all kinds of families. And as we've said before, this day is not joyful or celebratory for everyone. Poet Jane Kenyon talked about the long struggle to be at home in the body. She called it this difficult friendship. So many of us, not all of us, but many, can tend to live in our heads and in certain ways forget our bodies, except when there's something we don't like about them. We forget that to sing, to dance, to walk are just as important as engaging our brains. We forget that we can pray with our bodies, that singing with other people can help to serve as a shelf or a resting place for our anxiety, that it forms bonds between us and others. Some of the most powerful spiritual practices, at least for me, have been embodied. To dance together in a sacred circle, to sit in silence, to raise our voices in song, or to simply speak on those drives, to speak out loud to something I'm not sure exists, to something I'm not sure hears me. I learned from my mother that to do these things is both to care for the body and to care for the soul, and that both are sacred. Writer Kathleen Norris reminds us that reluctance to care for the body is one of the first symptoms of extreme melancholia. Shampooing the hair, washing the body, brushing the teeth, drinking enough water, taking a daily walk, as simple as they seem, these are acts of self-respect. They enhance one's ability to take pleasure in oneself and in the world. Care is not passive. The word derives from an Indo-European word meaning to cry out, as in to cry out in a lament. Care asserts that as difficult and painful as life can be, it is worth something to be in the present, to be alive, doing one's daily bit. The poem, What I Learned from My Mother, is a window into the best things we learn from our mothers, how to love others and how to give of oneself. The truth, though, is that so many of us learned other things too, especially people who were socialized as women. especially when it comes to our bodies. So many of us watched our mothers diet, comment negatively on their own bodies, and I remember watching this with friends' mothers, with aunts, with family, with so many who are close to me. These messages are socialized into us. I can remember women that I admired, that I thought were beautiful, making it clear how much they truly hated themselves. For those of us who were socialized as women, the world has always seemed concerned and consumed with our bodies. We get the message from a young age through dress codes explicitly, but certainly other places implicitly, that our bodies are distracting, dangerous, bad somehow, though we are always too young to understand when this first happens, that our bodies will distract men, that somehow that is our burden to carry. This is the messaging that I grew up with, and I hope that someday it will be otherwise. The body and all of our angst over its size and shape, and maybe later in life over its viability, its ability, touches all of our most tender stuff. Our desire to be loved and accepted by others, to be seen as valuable, as many of us are taught that our beauty is an indication of our value. It can be hard to talk about, and so many of us just simply don't acknowledge it at all. But we live in these bodies, and though this difficult friendship may take a lifetime to form, it is at the core of the human experience. So talk we must. We've talked quite a bit about white supremacy culture this year, the phrase which we in Unitarian Universalist circles have used for the past few years to refer to the ways in which white people are socialized toward things like perfectionism, toward quantity over quality, to take offense to direct communication and open conflict, and so many other things. But this also extends as deep into each one of us as the way we view our bodies and those of others. We are socialized to believe that the size and shape of our bodies is a reflection on us as human beings, a reflection on our morality, that smaller bodies are more deserving of love than larger ones. Sabrina Strings wrote in her book, Fearing the Black Body, about the ways in which the transatlantic slave trade changed the outlook around bodies and beauty, specifically in relationship to size. We know that in Europe, especially during the Renaissance, curves and fuller figures were valued, but then there was a shift toward a preference for thinness, so much so that some are quite literally dying to be thin. Strings argues that as European philosophers were traveling to Africa, they were making these arguments that Africans are sensuous, they love food, their bodies are bigger. And in Europe, people were very much the same size-wise, but the Europeans started to believe that they should have rational self-control and should be thinner. In essence, this became a mechanism of determining who was free and who was not. Eating and body size became two of the primary characteristics that were used to suggest that certain people do not deserve freedom. This is a lot to take in, and I will talk again about this idea as it could fill many, many sermons. But as we're trying to move forward in this world with radical acceptance for all people, body size is an important and complicated and nuanced piece of this. We cannot talk about honoring the body and nurturing beauty without understanding the racial implications even today. Of course, long before the Renaissance and the transatlantic slave trade, people were writing about the body. There has always been a debate amongst philosophers, theologians, and others as to whether the body and the soul are one and the same, or whether the soul is separate from the body. As Stephanie Paulsell writes in her book, Honoring the Body, sometimes we know that we are in our bodies, that our capacity for life and death makes us who we are. At other times, we feel that we simply inhabit a vessel that is inadequate to contain all that we are. But at all times, it is the body that allows us to reach out for one another, to steady each other on our feet when we are weak, to embrace one another in joy and in despair. Sometimes I believe it is only through our own vulnerability that we are able to find the sacred. Only when we truly need others that we can find beauty. Paulsell goes on to say that the 4th century Christian scholar Jerome believed and taught that the body was the great equalizer of persons. Bodily vulnerability is something we all share, rich and poor, male and female, enslaved and free. Early Christians preached that knowledge of such shared vulnerability must lead us to solidarity with every other human body, especially the bodies of the poor. These Christians knew that what is suffered by one can be suffered by all, and that every body is a fragile temple of God's Spirit and worthy of care. It's kind of like that phrase in the Marge Piercy poem, live as if you liked yourself, and it may happen. I'd read that to you every single week if I could, and maybe to myself. Live as if you liked yourself. Liking yourself in a world that maybe doesn't want you to, I think is an act of rebellion. So as we close this morning, that line is repeating over and over in my head. I learned from my mother how to love the living. We all have so much we have learned from those who mothered us, and so much we might need to unlearn. And we hope that we might do better, even as we know it will be the same with our children or those we love like children. Such is the cycle of life. But that love, that desire to love all that is alive, including and especially our bodies, that will be the lesson of a lifetime. May it be so. Amen. I invite you to rise, either in body or in spirit, and join in singing our closing hymn, Immortal Love. It's number 10.
Immortal love forever full, forever flowing free, forever shared, forever whole, a never-ending sea. How outward lips confess the name, all other names above. But love alone knows whence it came and comprehendeth love. The winds of love awake and blow, the mist of hate away. Sing out, O truth divine, and tell how wide and far we stray. The letter fails, the systems fall, and every symbol waves. The Spirit overlaying all, eternal love remains.
We extinguish this flame, but not our commitment to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. This we do because we envision a beloved community filled with compassion, helping all to thrive in a just world.
Friends, my prayer for you this morning is that you learn to love the living and to honor all that has given you life. Go in peace.